Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of Iblis Manifestations Podcast. I'm honored to be joined on this episode by none other than Linnéa Olsson. She is a veteran of the metal scene, and she is predominantly known for her work in Maggot Heart, a very interesting band which we will soon get to hear much more about. And I have very much been enjoying a lot of their music, especially on the newest record, and I cannot recommend them enough. If you haven't heard them already, and if you have, then you know exactly what I am talking about. And Linnea is a very special musician, and she's been a part of various other projects throughout time, which we got to discuss, of course. Her previous projects include The Oath, Sonic Ritual, and she also used to be a part of Grave Pleasures as well as Beastmilk in the early to mid 2010s, really. Yeah, we got to discuss a lot of that, and obviously she used to be a reporter previously as well, so I got to discuss some of that with her as well, and just generally what is the difference between being a reporter and then actually being a musician and being on the other side of the mic. And it was a very honest and open conversation, and she got to share with us a lot of her perspectives, not just as a musician, but also as a woman within this scene, and some of the struggles that she has actually faced during her time as a musician. So, coming shortly will be that, and of course, I very much appreciated Linnea's time to join me on this episode. If you haven't already, please feel free to share and subscribe to the content on Iblis Manifestations, and let us know your thoughts and feedback. We do very much appreciate it. And despite professional advice, I do actually pay attention to the feedback here because we're doing this together. So feel free to let us know your thoughts. And I hope that, of course, you will enjoy my conversation with Linnea and find it inspiring. And also a quick note as well. Linnea's newest record with Maggot Heart called Hunger will be out on the 29th of September. And that, of course, will be linked below. So please make sure to go and check that out. And yeah, it's a great record. I've had the privilege to hear it, and it sounds fucking badass. So yeah, make sure to check that out. And one more quick thing before we go into the end of the introduction part of this episode. My band Trivax will also be releasing a new album, coincidentally on the same date, on the 29th of September. It will be called Eloah Burns Out. So if you like your black and death metal coming from the heart, and if you like it vicious but you still want a touch of melancholy, then this might be the album for you. So keep an eye out for this one, and of course, if you have a spare minute, then you can also check out our newest single called Azrael. It will be out via Cold Never Dies, once again on 29th of September, same date as Maggot Heart's Hunger album coming out. So keep an eye out for those, okay? Anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Linnea Olsson to Iblis Manifestations. Okay, Linnéa, welcome to Iblis Manifestations. It's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, not bad. I'm a bit tired. Like we're right in the middle of like preparations for tour basically. Like we're starting to rehearse after 6 months of no rehearsals. So I'm a little bit out of shape, but yeah, otherwise good.
Well, I don't imagine you would ever really be out of shape musically, considering the wealth of experience that you actually have behind you as a musician.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like it's a, it's like riding a bike, right? But I don't know, I always get paranoid that if there's like a long break in between um playing, that you kind of like lose it somehow. But you're right. I mean, it kind of like it's in the backbone, so it's fine.
Yeah, I guess it's about picking up that chemistry within the band as well, because I think that's probably one of the most important things that you guys, from my impression, and it's sort of like the songs somehow already exist in the ether somewhere, but it's just sort of picking up the pieces and then connecting together again, I think.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, definitely. I think you're right there. Like I I definitely feel like the chemistry within the band is special, and uh special because we played together for a while, so that's sort of what happens. But also special in a, you know, kind of more, I don't know, spiritual way, in the sense
Hmm.
that, it's just, who knows why good chemistry exists, right? And yeah, I think that definitely when it comes to Uno and Olivia, like we haven't played for a while, and then you get into a room with them, and then it feels kind of like it was like just yesterday that we played. Like they are um, incredibly good musicians as well, so that doesn't hurt. And yeah,
No, I agree. I think, in the sense that, I mean, first of all, you have fantastic musicians with you in this band, and I think this is actually something that shows a lot on the newest record as well. I was obviously very lucky to get a preview of the record, so thank you for that. It sounds amazing, and I think that there's so many things I love about this record, and honestly, I feel like. I mean, we can get into that, but I actually think that Maggot Heart is probably, out of every project that you have done, to me, it just feels like it's the one. This is the one, basically, And I know you've been involved with a lot of projects, but from my perspective, just as a listener, it seems that this is where you've truly excelled as an artist, but also as a band as well. I think it's really powerful.
yeah, thank you so much. That's really nice of you to say. And like I agree with you. I think like I was like a little bit of a late bloomer. I've been playing for a really long time. Like I started playing. I played many different instruments before I started playing the guitar. Like when I was a kid, I played saxophone, I played piano, like I sang in the choir and everything. So it's not like it was, very new when I started the guitar, but it took me a while to sort of gain the confidence in order to like truly feel like this is, what I should be doing. And um like a lot of like you meet other musicians, and they have just been sort of like dead set on it from the beginning. And I think that I felt like it definitely was the calling for me, but I was a bit unsure of my abilities, and I didn't really have like a ton of support. It wasn't like I was part of some scene where there was like a lot of people like encouraging me to play or anything like that. It was like
Mhm.
for a long time I thought that like my role in underground music was going to be that I would be doing what you're doing now, that I'm like interviewing musicians and that I'm a writer, like I can write about music, and I can, like I can be part of it in that sense. And I think that that was sort of like my way of, like I was basically like scared of doing this sort of full on. And then when I did start like playing I mean, I had bands when I was a teenager and whatever, but like my first band, I was like 21. And then when that kind of, uh, kind of fizzled out, then it took me quite a few years before I started playing again. And then I started this band, The Oath. And then it was sort of like, and by then I was like already, 26, 27. So I feel like it's sort of it's taken a little bit of time to kind of like arrive at this point. And this was a very long kind of like segue into saying that I agree with you. And I think that like, this is definitely, I'm at a point where I feel like, it's not like I'm playing in a band or whatever. Like the music that I'm doing is a representation of me as an artist. And um, yeah, it's just like not really even on the same level as my other bands. And don't get me wrong, like I love, collaborating with other people, and you can play on their songs, so you can, you know, do whatever. That's great. It's like even a relief sometimes, but this is like, Maggot Heart is something where I really like put every single like drop of me, into it.
Mm.
And I also think that we've arrived at a point now where it's like, pretty good. Pretty
Yes,
good.
pretty good indeed. No, I think actually that yeah, I have to agree with you. It's I think what's very special about Maggot Heart, and I'm going to take the presumption at the very least that this is probably what people are going to like so much about it, is just how personal it is. And this is all of the lyrics and everything, which we can get into, which you do a fantastic job, by the way. There's such a great touch of
Thank you.
poetry to some of your stuff. But I think that's the element. It's that sort of taking your own path, and the element of freedom and liberation which is attached to it. And you can sense this all the way from the first album, actually, even from the lyrics and so on. When you pay attention to it, there is that sense of taking ownership of your own artistic approach. But just as a little bracket here, I'm going to tell you something, actually. You'll probably find this funny, just because you mentioned about the thing of doing in interviews and stuff. I myself, I'm a musician too, by the way, just for reference. But my very first impression of you, just as a person, is actually as a journalist. And I'm gonna go back by, let's see,
Yeah.
12 years ago. So this was at the Big Four shows.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna go there. Yeah, that's
Yes.
funny.
Yeah, so that was actually because I think obviously I was still in Iran at that time, and you can't really broadcast these things, but there are people who've got internet and special VPN, and then they'll take these sort of broadcasts, and then they'll put them on a DVD, and then they'll sell them for a bootleg. And I remember buying the bootleg for that and
Oh my
watching it, and I
God, yeah.
remember seeing you on there. I think that was also the first time I heard of Ghost, because James Hetfield was wearing their T-shirt saying he
Yeah.
was in their fan club or something.
Yeah, that was like an iconic night. Yeah, for sure. That's really incredible that you got a bootleg of that.
Yeah, well, that's how we would work back then.
Yeah.
I had like bootlegs of like Gorgoroth and Cannibal Corpse and
Yeah.
all this stuff, or like
Yeah.
Mayhem. And then to me, that was one that I really wanted to watch what the gigs looked like. I know they did one in Bulgaria that was pretty big, but I know the Sweden one was a really big deal as well. So I remember like getting that and then just watching it at home, being like, "Oh my God, look at this!"
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's really funny. I mean, like I was a journalist for many years, and this was I mean, yeah, when did you say it was? 2006?
11, I think.
11, 6, 11. Okay. Yeah.
Close
So it
enough.
was I was invited to co-host this like live broadcast of the Big Four playing in Sweden. And this was I don't really know like why they asked me, because I've never, well, I mean, I was writing, but I'd never done any TV before. And I think that like like the whole day was like complete chaos, because like I don't know, I didn't have any experience. And the other presenter that I did it with is like a really famous, like well-known journalist. And yeah, it was a lot of fun, and still to this day I get like people talking about it sometimes, you know, like some
Right.
person would be like, "Oh yeah, I saw you like I saw you in that thing." I was just like improvising the whole day through. I think that you can see that I'm kind of like, I don't know, I'm asking some questions that wasn't really like written down beforehand, and it was wild. It was like a lot of fun, and that thing of like James Hetfield wearing the Ghost t-shirt is like, I mean, that was just sort of like the starting point of Ghost, just like boom, you know,
Yeah.
like becoming really big. And yeah, I have fond memories of that. Like there's parts of, you know, the metal journalism that I thought was obviously a lot of fun, you know, and it was like also like it was during an era where I mean, like when I started out, there was like still this kind of like, you know, like a lot of money in the industry. Like the labels would have money to kind of like just like you know, bribe all of the journalists and like kind of like spoil the journalists. And you know, I would go on trips, and my job was to go to metal shows like several times a week. And I was freelancing also for like a daily, sorry, yeah, like a daily national newspaper. And
Okay.
I like there was so much like money in the culture section when I started that I could like pick like obscure like underground bands and put them into the national Swedish newspaper. And that was kind of cool, you know. It's like, you know, like nobody was sort of like regulating. It wasn't like I only had to write about, you know, Metallica and whatever. But then, you know, the you could like the everything just kind of started to narrow down, and it got like less and less space. And um I also got like more and more kind of bored with journalism in general. So that's what happened.
Was there anything that you learned during your time as a journalist which has aided you now in being an artist and how you're going to present yourself out there into the world?
Well, I mean, like I think about this sometimes because it's like, you know, um, uh, there's definitely a lot of like there were like positive moments, but there was like a lot of negative experiences for me as well. It was a lot of negative experiences for me being a woman. It was a lot of negative experiences of being like young, yeah, like a young woman basically. Like I was like I had to go through a lot of fucking shit. You know, like I was the youngest out of all of the journalists, and I was the only one who was a woman, and it was a complete like boys club at best, and like a playground for like blatant misogyny at worst. And like this kind of like it really shapes you as a person because it's not really something that you even, I mean, it's so normalized that you don't really like even recognize it when you were growing up. You know, I started writing when I was 14, so I was like really young, and just like very kind of like in love with this music, and really wanted to be a writer. And it was like a space that wasn't necessarily super safe for somebody like me. And yeah, it kind of like it definitely shaped me in the sense where I did not feel like very supported by my superiors. I didn't really feel like supported in the scene, and it just kind of fueled like a lot of this sense of this like need for agency that I have, and like this need for um independence, and this kind of like I really like I think back on it and I'm just like, fuck you guys, like what the fuck is this? And I don't want to write about these fucking dudes playing their shit music anymore, you know, and have like these people being my superiors who doesn't care about the welfare of their writers. And it just sort of like, it's kind of, you know, when you're a woman in the scene, like all of these things, all of these small like little cuts, they become like some sort of wound that is a part of you in a bigger whole. And it's not something that I like go and cry about on a daily basis, but it's like, you know, it's just there, like it's definitely there. And I also feel like, you know, as an independent musician, when you have seen how like the industry works in terms of who gets to be reviewed, like who gets to be nominated for awards, like how does it work with like labels and advertising, and what kind of, you know, what kind of coverage, like who gets coverage and how much does that have to do with the advertising that the labels are paying for, things like that. Then you kind of, I mean, I sort of feel like I have a pretty good grasp on how the industry is working, and that has also like just made me want to maybe do my own thing. It's just like, it's just something. I think that some people are like that, you know, that when they just want to do kind of like the opposite, you know, and like that's a little bit how I operate as well. I don't know if
Yeah.
that answered your question, but yeah.
Well, it's a point I completely relate to, actually.
Yeah.
In terms of taking your own approach, as far as having those misogynistic experiences and things like that, I sympathize with that completely.
Sure.
I can't pretend to know what it's like to
No,
experience
no,
something
no, no,
like that.
exactly. That's the way that it is. That's fine.
Yeah. So you have my respect for that, but I'm aware of this as well. So it's not like it's the first time I'm hearing this. I have other female friends who have been journalists, and they've all experienced something like this. And I
Yeah.
think it's just this strange, I think, power play that happens with a lot of people, and people are very easily corrupt as soon as they're in a position of, be it hierarchy, where you get to decide a band's fate or you get to decide a journalist's fate, and as long as you're in
Yeah.
positions like that, then,
Yeah.
you know what they say, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I don't think that's an excuse for the type of behavior, by any means. But again, I think that having this sort of insight into your personal journey, I think that the steps that you have taken actually make perfect sense now. And this can be from an artistic perspective, the fact that, I mean, another thing that I can point to is the fact that until Maggot Heart, as far as I'm aware, you never even really did any kind of vocals for any of the other
No.
projects. And then there
Yeah.
you are doing the most honest and naked style of singing, as the front piece of the band. I think that's very admirable.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really nice. I mean, the singing was definitely something that I think, like I told you before, that I was like, I had like created this narrative to myself where I'm like, oh no, I don't really want to be a musician. I want to be a writer. But like actually I did want to be a musician. And then I think the second narrative was probably like, oh no, I don't really need to sing. I'm okay standing here with my guitar. And
Sure.
I think that like I definitely have had like this need to express myself, but it just basically hasn't been the right moment, I think if I would have tried to do it earlier, it wouldn't have worked. I wasn't ready at that point. And I was like, when I started Maggot Heart, I was kind of like forced into a situation where I really had to do it. Like it was very much out of my comfort zone. It was something that was like really like, I just like wanted to like puke when I was thinking about it. It made me so nervous, the idea of singing, because I mean, it's like fucking hard to play and sing at the same time. And then you have to, I don't know, everything about it was just like really nerve wracking.
Well,
But
especially for your style of playing guitar. I mean, you've got all these crazy dissonant melodies and things, and you're singing over them. That can be easy.
No, I mean that's the thing, because I was always looking at like myself as a guitar player, and the way that I write the songs were like based around the riffs. And then it would be like, oh, okay, but like, oh, I have a melody over here like on top, but that would like come like later, so it when it came to when it came down to trying to do this at the same time, it was definitely a learning curve. And I think that now it's changed the way that I play the guitar a little bit, because now, like for the new album, I was thinking more in terms of like songs, like more kind of like traditional song structures of like verse and like chorus or whatever, more like chord progressions maybe, rather than like riff by riff by riff, because in the past, like I've been quite like riff obsessed, and it's like the riffs is like sort of what I love. But now I think that like on this album, I mean there's still a lot of stuff going on, but it's like it's a little bit more song oriented, in the sense that like I would maybe like sit at home and like work on the vocals at the same time as doing the guitar, if that makes sense, instead of like chopping it up.
Well, I think I understood that point, because I think that when you're just sat at home creating demos and you've got your guitar in your hand, and you can just play the guitar and record it however way you wish, without the limitations of having to think about what the vocals are going to be like. And then
Yeah,
when you add the vocals later and then combine the two, sometimes that can be very intricate. Whereas I think I can see the value in creating a nice flow between the two, because then I also think that you get to project more when performing live as well, rather than thinking too much about what melodies you're playing and am I doing the right stuff down here and singing the right notes. And there's a lot of
yeah,
multitasking going on.
yeah. I mean, there's a ton of multitasking happening in this band in general. It's like, I mean, it's I like that's also like interesting, because like in my head this has been like a quite sort of like stripped, like I don't know, it's been like a quite like to the core band. But then I realized that it's like there's actually quite a lot of things happening, especially with like Uno's drumming. There's like a lot of, and we have like a lot of tempo changes, and there's like you know it's not like a punk band, it's not like it's like the Ramones or anything. But I guess it also like depends on like your reference point, because it's not a metal band either, so it's not like I don't know, it's not like we're Blood Incantation or something that just has like all like all of this stuff going on. But yeah, in terms of the singing and the guitar playing, I mean that's just like I feel like I've just gotten better at it. Like I feel like if I wouldn't have been better at it by now, it probably wouldn't, like, what's the point? Like
Sure.
you're supposed to like get better and better. And I feel very comfortable with the singing now. It's like something that's like I think has been really good for me um on a deeper level, because it's like, yeah, it's, I mean, it is expression, right? Like, and there isn't so many other ways where you can kind of like really kind of like scream out like these things that you have within you. And I I really I really enjoy it. Like I think I think that on the new record, like I'm singing like pretty good. Like it's much better than it's been in the past. It's definitely better than the first two records, I think. So
I have to agree. I think that even though obviously that was still a relatively new thing for you when you did those earlier records, I and I think that they still sounded pretty good. But this one is just it's, I think it's not just the skill that feels better, but it just feels more honest. Therefore, it feels like whatever that internal whatever those emotions are being channeled the proper way here. And I think that's actually something that you can feel when you listen to the album. And it's almost a little, there's a radioactive element to the emotional side of your music, because to me, it's like you listen to it, and I think a lot of people, nowadays, when they listen to music, first thing they try and think of is, okay, which genre is this? Oh, this sounds like punk, this sounds like black metal, this is this, whatever. But sometimes I just think it's good to just listen to it for what it is and see it as that artist's own expression, which for your work, I personally see it as like there's this very interesting, almost Black Sabbath-like split of instruments, which you get on the album because you get the guitar slightly to the side, the bass is sort of there, and then there's this very wonderful, like, live setting almost that you get on this newest record. But then at the same time, you've got all these very, very melancholic parts. There's very dissonant parts, and then overall, you can imagine it be something that people could listen to on a wider scale, but also at the same time, it has this weird, unhinged, and dark element within it that almost reminds you of Necrovore. That's the kind of vibe that I get.
Yay! I
Yeah.
love Necrovore, so that's very cool. Yeah, I mean that's like a really great compliment, because that's sort of, I mean, I think that's like the ultimate, like that's like the ultimate thing, right? With something that you feel could be like something that is, not too, should I say, like not too narrow or whatever, like something that is like, I hate to say this word, but like it could be like accessible or whatever,
Sure.
but you don't want it to sort of like, you don't want it to roll it too far into that either. You want to like try to keep some sort of like friction. I think that like there has always to be friction, some sort of like edge, something that feels like it's a little bit like, yeah, like you said, like a little bit unhinged. And that's a really good compliment, like to my ears, because I really don't mind, like I really don't mind like a pop song, like, and I don't have any problems with like a good pop hook. And I like, I mentioned the Ramones, and it's just like, it would be fucking great to be able to write like the perfect like 3 minute like pop song, but then I never get there. It's sort of like, obviously, yeah, I'm not as skilled, but like everything just kind of like unravels, and then it ends up being like a 7 minute song instead, and then it has like all of these layers. But I do really love the simplicity of a guitar solo that you can sing along to, or a, like a very clear vocal line, like I listen to a lot of very like kind of stripped down music, like I listen to a lot of rap, and that has like one good beat, like a lot of, good like good electronic music, like good techno, that's just like super minimal. You can do so much like with the snare and like a hi-hat basically. And yeah, I mean, I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway, that's what
I guess what you're really saying is that you're listening to all these different genres and then just basically creating your own twist on music as a whole, and not really limiting what you're doing as an artist, which I actually think is very crucial. The way I look at this is that if you want to play black metal, then that's fine, but let's hope that you end up playing it by accident because it's your truest expression. That's the way I look at it. Yeah.
I get what you mean. Like, I feel like sometimes I would be like, oh, now I'm gonna try to write like a Celtic Frost riff, but then I'm completely unable to do, like, I honestly like feel like these people who can copy like like one genre and just be like, do that, like, okay, fine, but I don't even know how to do it. Like, I find it like and also extremely uninspiring. Like, if you're gonna do like something that is just one thing, then you have to be so incredibly good at it that you have to sort of like, there has to be something that sort of like catapults it forward. if you're only copying or trying, like, or deciding that your band is going to be, this or that before you even start playing,
Yeah.
which I find like a lot of bands are doing. It's sort of like they decide like their look and their, like, what bands they want to sound like before they start playing. And that's just like not really interesting to me. Like, you can be very, very, like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you have to have something that is interesting. You have to have some sort of story, and you have to be like authentic. There has to be something that is like, there has to be integrity there, basically. And I think that you can feel it right away, and you can hear it right away if there isn't any fucking integrity. Like, if there's something that feels phony, then it's just like game over, I think, you know?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore. I think that artistic integrity is everything. Otherwise, why the fuck would you want to go through the crazy, intense touring, all the rehearsals, all the money you have to spend, all the
Yeah, I
investments?
agree.
It doesn't make sense to do it otherwise.
I agree.
And at least if that's what you want to do, fair enough. Then at least do a genre that's going to pay you well, not some some kind of an underground thing. I think the underground, the whole purpose of it is that we get to share our own truest poetry, really, And speaking about being authentic as well, this is something I think about a lot as well. Not just with the music that I consume and listen to, but even with my own music as well. And we just released our music video, the newest one, about a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Funnily enough, actually, both of our albums are coming out on the 29th of September. So
So
that's going to
we're
be.
in competition.
And I don't think we're in a competition. I just think that the listeners are having a nice treat. That's all I'm thinking. And it's very different styles, to be honest. Ours is very kind of like, yeah, it's just different. But I think that one of the reasons why I brought this up is because obviously with us having a Middle Eastern background and whatnot, I wanted to be authentic about it, and that's why I created this whole intro section, which I actually used the baklama for, which is this weird 3-string instrument, that you only mainly see in like the Eastern traditional folk music and stuff like that, and I didn't use that just to be sort of stereotypical either, but that was just like, that's a part of me, that's a part of my own heritage that
Yeah,
I've grown
sure.
up with. And then I channeled that, and it's crazy seeing people have responded very well to this, which I didn't expect. But it's kind of like, I think it sort of speaks to that aspect of authenticity. But also, I feel like there's something with you guys, with you Swedish guys as well. And I don't know what it is, but there's this. Maybe this isn't everyone, but there is that interesting breed amongst yourselves as artists, where I mean, in Solitude, we're very much like this. Gottfried, bass player, who I've had on the podcast before, I totally got this vibe from him, where it's like art matters above all the other aspects of the industry and everything else. It almost feels like the industry part of music is just an excuse to get the art out there, and there's this sort of very tunnel vision approach to the art, which I absolutely I adore. This, I think this is very valuable, to be honest with you. So what do you think it is about Sweden in particular that breeds such a powerful thing in arts, and particularly the sort of the level of darkness that comes from music? If you want to look at it all the way from like Bathory and Morbid, but all the way until now, and yourselves as artists, what do you think that is in the Swedish soil that breeds such a powerful thing?
Yeah, I don't really know if I can say much about where it's coming from, or like why it is like that, but I can definitely tell you that, like, when I moved to Germany and I was like, fuck Sweden, then I like very quickly realized, when I was trying to like put together a band here, that like I had been extremely spoiled in Sweden, because there is just like a certain level of musicianship that I like in the underground. I'm talking about like, you know, like people who don't necessarily see themselves as musicians, you know, like the level would still be so high, like compared to like the majority of the people that I would like meet here in Germany. And like I'm not saying that to like trash on Germany or anything. It was just like it's just an observation. I think that like I don't really know where it's coming from. Having that said, and I think that you're like completely right when it comes like there's like so many unique, you know, like true artistic outputs from Sweden, you know, from Bathory to In Solitude. Having that said, I also think that there is something in Sweden where Sweden are very good at like this thing where we talked about like some Swedes are extremely good at this like mimicking thing where it's like they're very good at like adopting. I'm not going to mention any bands here, but like they're very good at sort of like hearing something, being like, oh, I want to do something like that, and then kind of like mimicking it almost to
Sure.
perfection. It's like almost like, oh, sometimes it's like too perfect, you know. I feel like that was like the issue that I had like living in Sweden. I would get like a little bit bored with this like over the top like perfection, and like I would be like more, I felt like more maybe a kinship with Oslo, like with the Norwegians in that sense, that are like they're a little bit more like it's a little bit more punk, like a little bit more rowdy. It's not like Sweden is a little bit pretentious, you know, like it takes itself like very seriously.
I've
But
heard
this
this
is just
before.
I can say this because I am Swedish, you know.
Sure.
But in terms of, you know, these like speaking about like In Solitude for just as an example, I don't know, like that's what they had, like was something very unique. Like they had like the group of people that were growing up together there, like, you know, like I said, I didn't really have this kind of like encouragement like from my peers, you know. Uno and
Hmm.
Gottfried and all of them, they grew up together, and they were encouraged from from their parents from when they were little. Like their parents were musicians, they had like hippie parents. You know, that
Hmm.
was like something where they were like allowed to really like grow and explore that like part of them. It was something that was like I think was just considered complete second nature, that of course they're like they this is what they should be doing.
Hmm.
um I think that that's like very important when it comes to any sort of like artistic endeavor, you know, if this is something that you're like being allowed to thrive and explore, or if it's something that like is sort of working against you. So I don't know if that's different in Sweden, like compared to other countries, you know, like we have like we had like a state funded music school in Sweden. Like anybody, like when you're a kid, you're allowed to start playing any instrument.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like different like anywhere else, like in Europe, or if that's like unique to Sweden. But
No,
but
I'm
yeah,
aware that there's a lot of sort of government support and things like that, which I'm sure that helps for sure, definitely. But I also think that when you look at the degree of extremism, because you can make the music available to people to express themselves, but still how they choose to express themselves is a different thing. And
yeah, that's true.
when you look at the history of Sweden, it always makes me wonder, like, what's in the DNA memory of the people over there, because obviously, like us as human beings, not only do we carry the memory of just ourselves and our own lives, but and by carry I mean literally carry this in our DNA rather than remember, oh, what did I buy from the shop last week. you know it's more like a sense of the DNA of our ancestors and what they've gone through, and I wonder if there's something very special perhaps that might have happened somewhere along the Swedish bloodline that's resulted
I
in what.
mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that this sort of like darkness or whatever, like this kind of expression exists within all of us. Like I really truly believe that that is
Mm.
the case. And it's like it really doesn't matter if you're like a man or a woman or where you're coming from. Like in some ways, I think that we were just like maybe lucky, and maybe I don't know. Like for Norway, I think the like overpowering Christian heritage probably had something to do with it, because you know it has to be some sort of backlash, you know, and also like let's not forget, like we're talking about like white, quite like privileged, like middle class guys
Yeah.
here, you know, like it's not like they have, most of them have like gone through something extremely difficult or had to struggle or been a part of a war or anything like that. Like, you know, it's coming from
Mm.
something that is like, I don't know if it's boredom or if it's sort of like a spiritual, like inner turmoil of like, you know, kind of like I have everything, but still I'm not, I'm feeling all of this anger. I don't know, like you can, like, there are a lot of philosophical sort of like angles you can take on that, I guess.
For
I
sure.
would say
Yeah.
though, like I would say on like on the topic, and that is like, uh, you know, this thing of sort of like growing up in an environment where you feel encouraged. And I like I said earlier, like I never really felt this, and I never like as a woman, I don't think like you have the same sort of, there isn't this sort of like a playground where you're allowed to sort of experiment, and you're allowed to fuck up, and you're allowed to like make all of these mistakes that sort of like are shaping you as a person and as an artist inevitably. I think that since you're like somebody, if you're a woman or a girl, then you're like you're the anomaly, right? So you're kind of like the odd person out, which means, and you aren't really allowed to fuck up because you have to sort of like stay on point all the time. And this kind of changes like the collective consciousness of female musicians as well, I think, because there, yeah, there's like less room for there's like less margin of error basically. So you become like a little bit more kind of on edge, and you learn to have to be like pretty good pretty fast, not as good as your male counterparts, but sometimes even you have to be better, because you're not really like allowed to make the mistakes, or else you will be kind of singled out and like done with. So that's also something about like the collective consciousness that I think like there's a point to it.
Sure. This is a very interesting angle. I mean, I guess that that could be true for sure. I think that there's, you know, when I think about this and when I think about music and just how our relationship has been with, you know, just a very small scene, you know, where it's just sort of like everyone's only fighting over crumbs anyway, and the sort of the competitive nature that goes into that, and the power plays, which I sort of alluded to earlier. I can kind of see where you're coming from with that, and I guess that would make a difference for sure. And I also think that it's, you know, as artists, we tend to be a lot more sensitive people because you're sort of like an emotional sponge, basically. You know, you feel everything more than the average person. You know, whether it's the good feelings, you feel that more. Whether it's the negative feelings, you also feel that more. It's almost like there's a larger capacity, there's bigger space in our heart to put all of these things in somehow. and
Yeah,
and i
sure.
also and I also think that if you're, particularly for someone who would be a good-hearted, kind-natured person, you know, this can be a tough environment, but I think it's also important to find ways of learning how to express yourself, learning how to compete, but also learning, not to lose touch with our good side just because other people
Yeah,
are assholes, basically.
no, sure, definitely. But I think it's like it has to do with this sort of sense of, you know, like, am I an artist or am I not? Like it, like this, I don't know what it's like for you, but for me, like I can often like feel like I'm an imposter, you know, like imposter syndrome is like something that's like really common.
Mm.
And I see it sometimes in my male like peers, that they don't really question like this. For them it's like so kind of, it is so clear to them that this is something that is what they should be doing, you know? And I think that that is really like, you know, sometimes I would look at, you know, like, you know, if I have like my confidence is kind of like faltering, then I would look at like Danzig and I would be like, how is it possible to have like this confidence, you know? And it's like only a man can have this confidence. Like this guy is like not, he's not questioning like what he's doing at all, you know? And I see it a
Yeah.
lot in my like, yeah, like comparing like my like the women that I know that are musicians with my male counterparts. And this is like, this was not, I wasn't really going to go into this topic like that. It was just like something that I thought of on the spot. And I think that it in terms of really like trusting yourself and trusting like what it is that you do and why you do what you do is something that takes time. Like I, for me, like I said, you know, this wasn't, it wasn't something that I felt, you know, earlier when, like when I was growing up. It wasn't like my parents were like, oh, you're such an artist, like this is the path for you, you know. And I think that that is something that I like, I have kind of arrived at like late in life, feeling like this is actually like 100% what I want to do and what I should do and what I think that I'm good at, you know. And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think, well, here's how I look at this. I think that this would be now a perfect case of you're doing this because it is truly your calling, not because anyone else encouraged you to do it, not because you saw someone
Exactly.
else doing it. You're doing this
Yeah.
because it's your own calling in life and this is your own path. And I think that's what makes it special. That's what also makes the music of Maggot Heart extremely unique. And also, even to the point of when you're talking about imposter syndrome and things like that, I think there's an element for that. I actually think that's something that I feel like that happens more when you become more successful, where it's like where you're sort of aware at the back of your head of this sort of competition that
Oh yeah,
exists somewhere.
that somebody's just gonna like knock on you and be like, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
But I also even think just even the fact that you're sharing that here on this podcast, just the fact that you're so direct and personal with some of your lyrics, I think that the beautiful thing about art is that vulnerability is actually a superpower anyway. And I think
yeah,
that that in itself is something that once channeled into your work, and that I think, you know, like you mentioned the saying that the darkness exists in everyone earlier. I think that that's exactly what happens, because at the end of the day, fuck the industry. It's about people listening to the music and you connecting with them as an artist. And that
yeah,
darkness that's inside all of us, the darkness that you put out as an artist, is what another person who carries their own darkness will then relate to. And I think that's what makes a beautiful connection, really, you know, and that makes life tolerable for all of us.
yeah. That's very true. I mean, it's like, you know, sometimes I put a lot of myself into this music, you know, and it's like I also have a certain amount of ambition. Like I'm not a person who would be. I mean, this is sort of like I'm very contradictory this way. Like in one way, it's like I don't want to be a part of this bullshit, you know. But on the other side, I'm quite ambitious, and I'm not really. I'm not really a person who would be happy with only 5 people listening to my music. I mean, I would be. That's amazing, and like much better than 0. And if all of those 5 people are getting something out of it, amazing. But 50,000 would be better. Like that's how I feel. Like in like just for my like this. That's just like my nature, you know. Like the new record is called Hunger. You know, it's like it's about this sort of drive that like that I have, that we all have in certain aspects. Um,
For sure.
but but it's all like it's all about the connection. I was gonna say that like I put a lot of work into this band. Like not only the music, like I spend like my days. I manage my own band. Like I tour manage my own band. I have my own label. You know, like the preparation for something like this, like an album release that is an underground release, like on a quite like small scale, is still something that I do like on everyday basis. And I do it to the extent where I burn myself out because I don't have like the kind of like ability to put the brakes on, you know. But once I feel like there's like actually a person like connecting, it sounds like such a cliche, you know, but like once I feel like there's actually somebody like, you know, having a connection with what I do, it all just kind of like flips, you know. It's sort of like I can be like the most tired and spent and completely empty person, and I'll just be like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I like making myself suffer this much? Like I am like, you know, I'm putting so much energy into it and I get like almost nothing back. And then I would like play one show, or I will, you know, get like one person writing, or I would like speak to you and I feel like, you know, you understand what's going on. And then like it all kind of like flips, you know. That's the thing. Like it's really important to keep that in mind. But sometimes, you know, like you kind of like sit in your bubble and you feel like you are pushing towards something that is like never gonna happen. You're just like, I'm just like fucking working tirelessly and you don't really know like what's the point, you know. Like you will play shows and there will be almost nobody there, and you will, you know, you will like spend money on things and you will lose so much money, and you will like, you know, argue with your bandmates, and you will be physically like done, you know. You're so exhausted and you're like, what the fuck am I doing this shit for? Like why am I putting myself through this? And then you remember again why you
Yeah.
did it, and then it's sort of like you kind of forget about like all of that shit, you know.
Well, here's why I think it's always worth it, because doing this, yes, it might be like a job related thing, or you can look at the money and you can look at all these aspects. But at the end of the day, being an artist and expressing yourself, that is freedom. And
Yeah.
freedom is valued above all other things, as far as I'm
Mm-hmm.
concerned. And it's
Yeah.
something that, you know, I think that we should always be willing to pay the price for it. And I 100%, I listen, I understand exactly what you're saying. I've had many of those similar feelings over the years, of course, you know, to the point where you question your whole existence, you know, like never mind just the fact that, oh, why am I playing this show? You question your whole existence. Like, why am I even here? We all go through this, but I also think that even those thoughts alone are an opportunity to solidify why we're doing this, and that to
Yeah.
me is always just a pursuit of freedom. And yeah,
Yeah, that's really true. That's really true. It's like it's kind of like this ongoing tests, you know,
sure,
sort of like these tests of perseverance, or like test of your like almost like a spiritual test of your faith, you know.
yeah,
And that's really true. And I also think freedom is like this kind of um, this holy grail kind of concept that is like also at the center of like everything that I'm doing as well, you know, because I like the idea of kind of like being like like restrained or sort of like controlled is like the like it's my like absolute nightmare. You can go into specific like examples, or you can look at it on a philosophical, like from a philosophical lens. It doesn't really matter. Like
sure,
it's the it's what you're saying, like how freedom is like the absolute like goal of this. And you're right. Like it's something that should be remembered.
Absolutely. And when you reach that victory, when you have those moments when you're on stage and then you're taking in all of that love and the support and the power and the energy that's coming at you, that's something that you know you earned that. You don't need to show that to someone else to be proud of
Yeah.
it. You know to
Yeah.
yourself that you earned
Yeah,
that.
exactly. And I have to like also clarify, but because it's like, I was like, oh, 50,000 people. That's even not like that's not even a lot of people. But
No.
like I would be doing this even if nobody was listening. Like it's not
Yes.
like that's a fucking given. It's not like I would like, oh, the album didn't sell, I'm just gonna go back to my day job and do something else. Like that's not really like, and I don't mean that as like look at me how kind of like tough I am or anything. It's just sort of, it really hasn't, like I would be writing songs even if nobody was listening. but
Absolutely.
um
Yeah. It's done
but
out
it's
of a
about,
need rather than a want,
yeah,
really.
exactly. But it's about that human connection, right? And I feel like the very core of the reason of why I do music, or like why I listen to music, is to connect with something, like it could be like the connection to like yourself, or to some sort of like like source, if like you could say God or whatever it is, but like source I
Hmm.
think is like a good word for it.
Yes.
And where it could be like connection with other people. And that's what I meant when I say like, I have like ambition, and that is like that I want to go somewhere. I'm not gonna like, I'm not happy, I'm not this kind of like person who would be happy playing, playing on the weekends, like one weekend like here and there. Like if I do something, I would go like all
Mhm.
in.
That's absolutely fair enough. I completely respect it, and I know exactly where it is you're coming from, and I think your music speaks for that absolutely. Linnéa, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for
Yay.
jumping on Iblis Manifestations. I really appreciate
Yeah,
your time this
it,
evening.
it was it was really, really nice. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to my music, and for taking the time to reach out to do an interview, and for taking the time to come with such thoughtful questions. And it's really appreciated.
Thank you. I'm really happy to hear that. I don't actually prepare for any of these conversations. Really, I
Well,
just have
you're
followed
a
you for a
natural.
long time, so
Yeah.
yes. So I already knew what I would be curious to speak to you about, and we can probably carry on like this for another 2 3 hours. But I know since you have so many responsibilities with Maggot Heart,
Yeah. Sorry
I'm
about that.
going to I'm going to leave you be. Just before we wrap things up, anything you want to share with the audience? Any things to look out for?
Um, just that like we haven't played in a very long time, and we're starting to play live again this October. So if you happen to be in Germany, like we're playing 3 shows, and then we're playing America in October and November.
Excellent. And Hunger comes out on the 29th of
Yeah.
September.
Yeah.
Okay, so people will have two great albums to listen to on that day. One
That's
of them I can 100% vouch for. The other one I'm not so sure about yet.
right.
And
Nice
but yeah, and the one I can vouch for obviously being yours.
one. Yeah.
You guys are also playing London at the Black Heart in November, right?
Yeah, we're playing London after so many years. Like we played London last time into the 2018, so we're really excited to come back. Our bassist is from London, so
That's right.
we
Yes.
yeah, she's extra excited. But it's gonna be great. Yeah, I really think like the live band now is like pretty solid. So if you like rock and roll, then you know where to go.
If you like rock and roll with the darkness of Necrovore, yes,
Yeah,
then that's
exactly. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Amazing. I'm gonna try my best to be at that show.
Yeah,
I
great.
live, yeah, I live a while away from London, but when I saw the announcement, I got very excited for that, and I know our friends in Not are also playing that show, so
Oh
I'm
yeah,
really
cool.
looking forward
Great.
to it. Yeah.
Amazing.
All
Yeah, I
right.
hope to see you.
Yes, likewise, likewise. And I wish you all the best of luck with the new album. And to everyone else listening to the podcast thus far, go and check out Hunger. Go and listen to the new music video. It's called Looking Back at You. It's creepy as fuck. We didn't even get the chance to talk about it, but it's a very cool aesthetic video. So go check it out and be sure to support Maggot Heart. And we'll see you guys on the next episode of Iblis Manifestations. Cheers.
Thank you so much.